Hi, yeah, I'm here to check in. My last name is Hausman. That's spelled Haussman.
I'm sorry, sir. I can't seem to find your reservation.
Can you check again? It happens all the time. Sometimes people spell it with one S, two N's, but most of the time they spell it Hotelnerd. That's Hotelnerd.
Oh, yeah, that was it. Found it right here under Hotel Nerd.
Thanks.
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey, everybody, and thanks so much for tuning in once again to the No Vacancy podcast with me, Glenn Hausman. I am, of course, excited and delighted to have you here today. Can you believe it? This is the 102nd episode that we've done, and it's all because of folks like you. Next month, we're going to be having our 2-year anniversary, if you could believe it, with the No Vacancy site. And be sure to check out our companion site, novacancynews.com. Let me know what you think. We launched it at the end of the year, and it's a great repository of all the terrific news that you're finding in hotels, extended stays, service departments, and every other iteration you could think of, especially as we enter this shared economy. Also, I wanted to say that this show is brought to you in part by my friends at Duetto, the revenue strategy technology platform thousands of hotels are using to make more money. I know you like making more money. There's a reason why you're listening to this show. You're a career-minded person and you want to make more money. Duetto is going to help you do that. Be sure to check out a great interview I did on the novacancy.news website with their CEO, Patrick Bosworth, and what you need to know about hotel revenue strategy. And check them out at getrevenueresults.com, getrevenueresults.com. And also, if you check out novacancynews.com, click on the ad for Duetto because I got an amazing new white paper on your blueprint for taking business back from the OTAs. I think you're going to really love that. You're going to find it super interesting. I sure know I did. And if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, please make sure you do that. Just text the word hotel to 66866. If you're sitting there right now at the gym, you're probably going to listen to this. You're probably staring at your phone. Just text 66866 and the word hotel to 66866 and you'll be subscribed. All right. So we've been talking a lot in this series all about what's going on behind the scenes of hospitality. And one of the areas that I think are most interesting is the sharing economy. So today we're going to set the gear shift to the high gear of your soul because we're talking to Scott Shatford. He's the founder and CEO of AirDNA. Scott, awesome to have you here with me today.
Yeah, great to be here, Glenn.
Well, thanks a lot for chatting with me. You know, AirDNA, I don't know where that came from. AirDNA is a great idea. You're actually out there tracking more than 4 million vacation rentals around the world, helping entrepreneurs, with tools and insights to really help optimize their businesses.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, started about 3 years ago and realized that there was millions of these small business operators really operating small little lodging companies, if you will, that had kind of zero insights about how to price, what was good performance, what was good occupancy. So set out to really get some transparency in the market about, how to perform better.
Yeah, now I got to tell you, Scott, this is one of those ideas that to me are really fascinating because it's completely obvious, at the same time, completely elusive because no one had done something like this before. But you actually started out as an Airbnb entrepreneur renting places yourself, right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, back in 2012, I started renting out some places in Santa Monica. Mm-hmm. And that's how all great ideas are born, I think. You're trying to solve a problem that you yourself are having, and so you set out to figure out how to solve that problem. Yeah. So I was running 10 properties in Santa Monica and, was looking to expand my business even further and realized I was just operating in the dark. I had no idea where to get new properties, how to price my existing properties. So kind of set out to help myself solve those problems.
So were you always in the business of real estate, and how did you actually wind up having properties that you started renting out through Airbnb? I guess what I'm asking is, how did you first discover Airbnb? Which came first, the rentals or the Airbnb? That's a big puzzle to me for you, Scott.
Yeah, so I actually spent 10 years in sort of a data science, data analyst sort of position at a big consulting company. So I got laid off from that job, went on a 6-month trip around the world, put my place on Airbnb as the recommendation of my neighbor, and saw how easy it was, seeing that I was earning about $8,000 a month in my $3,000 a month apartment.
Whoa.
Got back, and decided, hey, like maybe I should get out of the 9-to-5 grind and figure out if I can be a kind of an entrepreneur on Airbnb, kind of scale this business out. So Airbnb came first, and then the data piece came second.
That's pretty. That's interesting that you were making so much money off of it. I wish that people wanted to stay here in my my house in Smithtown, Long Island, but not as cool as Santa Monica is. So I guess what happened is you kind of went into it on a little bit blindly as a way to just try to cover your expenses while you're traveling the world. Found out it was much more than that, and then I guess at some point you started buying additional real estate and putting that into the rental pool as well.
Yeah, I was really just taking kind of longer-term leases, corporate leases, and turning them into short-term rentals, right? So it was pretty low capital. I could start a new property for $8,000 to $10,000 to kind of furnish it, get it set up, and I could make that money back in my first 60 days, once I had it set up. So it was pretty scalable. So in the first 18 months, I got to about 10 properties, getting a new property, every 2 to 3 months. And so it seemed like a pretty no-brainer at the time. And it was a big secret that nobody really wanted to let the cat out of the bag because nobody wanted to share how much money they were making and entice new competition to the market, right?
Yeah, because if all of a sudden you let out that you were making that kind of money, then it would seem that everybody would immediately start to do that.
You would think so, right? There's always skeptics in any sort of get-rich-quick scheme, right? And that's kind of what it seemed like. It seemed too good to be true and too easy to be true. And so it really has taken 5 years for people to really verify that this is a legitimate business model. It might not be quite as easy as it was back then. Now, 800,000 properties in the U.S. on Airbnb when there was probably only about 200,000 when I started. So it's becoming a little bit more difficult. You got to be, on top of your game. You got to clean your places. You got to decorate real well. You got to get great customer experience. Where, 5 years ago, you could throw up any sort of dorm room up there and it'd do pretty well.
Yeah, I guess so, because I'm at the point now where if I'm looking at that type of property, and I've been honest with my my audience here, there has been time to time that I've used the Airbnb product. Number one, I think it's an interesting concept. Not that I'm going to sleep on some dude's couch. I'm going to only rent my own type of facility. But I feel, Scott, that if I'm a derelict at my duty of my job as I'll say, quote unquote, journalist. If I don't understand what that is all about. So I've stayed in them. I've tell people on, the speeches that I do on the road when I'm at events that the biggest sin is that I really like the experience. And I thought it was a really great idea that this whole kind of world started to develop. So at what point, Scott, did you say, I'm kind of working here blindly. I don't know if I'm getting the best rate. I don't know if I'm charging too much. Maybe I need to create something that'll help me do my business more efficiently?
Well, I think it's really just the data geek inside of me, right? I was working, like I said, for 10 years trying to help optimize a business, right? And it really irked me on a regular basis not to know whether I was the best performer or the worst performer in my marketplace. There wasn't really any way to say, was my occupancy great or how to benchmark that? And so, I guess it's just that kind of curiosity and just wanting to figure out, how to squeeze as much juice out of the lemon as possible, right?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I think it's just a natural curiosity of any sort of data-driven individual that just wants to get underneath exactly what they're doing, A/B test everything. And, I wrote a book on how to kind of optimize properties called the Airbnb Experts Playbook. And that was my first kind of foray into, best practices, tips and tricks sort of stuff in the marketplace.
So what is a big tip that you like to give? The one freebie, then at the end, we'll make sure you could do the sales for your book as well.
Yeah, there's lots of big tips. The most monumental one is obviously, there's pricing, which is, what it all comes down to at the end of the day is how you can dynamically price, understand your weekends and weekdays and what your true season, high season and peak season and shoulder seasons are. But really it comes down to marketing. And I think people really don't think about marketing. It's all about your images. It's all about kind of your copy. It's all about kind of creating this fantastical experience that people are going to have at your place, right? And so it's not just kind of a simple tip, but, it all comes down to why is somebody going to click on your image and how are you going to entice people to kind of buy now, right? Turn those looky-loos into bookers. And that's what it all comes down to at the end of the day.
It sounds like it's following the same pattern that the hotel industry did about 10 years ago, where owners of hotels would just go outside using a disposable camera. Yes, there were such things as disposable cameras. They'd just go outside and take a couple of pictures, but they wouldn't look great. They didn't really accurately represent the product, so they were doing themselves a disservice by not marketing it correctly. So, Scott, so at some point you put that data geekiness inside of you. You created this product, and how did it help you first in your own business? And then when did you realize, oh, this is something that I can share with the universe and make it a viable business in its own right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the pricing is really what I was trying to get underneath, right? A lot of times, the booking window is becoming much shorter for vacation rentals. It used to be people were booking 6-9 months in advance. And what I was seeing is that people were booking 1 week, 2 week in advance on average for my 1-bedroom property. And so you get down to that last 2 weeks and you'd be so nervous, like, do I keep my rates high?
Right.
Do I have a fire sale? Do I increase my rates if I'm the only place available that's going to be left available on that day? So that's really what I was trying to get ahead of, was like looking into the future, looking at what the availability of every competing property was in Santa Monica, and seeing what I thought the occupancy would be on the date of arrival. And so that really helped me do things like the last minute. I would sometimes raise my prices by 100%, knowing that there's still a lot of people coming to town and there was nothing left available. And so that's the problem I was really trying to solve, was really the revenue management piece originally. And at that point, I was looking at where I was going to expand my business. I had 10 properties in Santa Monica. Legislation was coming down the pipeline that wasn't looking too rosy for the short-term rental world. And so I was looking around Southern California and California in general, where should I be expanding and diversifying my kind of portfolio of rental properties.
Yeah, you know what? You make a great point, because I think that the biggest problem we have, and hoteliers have solved that problem with using great revenue management tools such as Duetto. Yeah, I just plugged them once again. But more importantly, if you're a novice at what you're trying to do, and you're trying to market your house, your apartment, your spare bedroom, whatever it might be, you're probably going to go out there and try to sell it as early as possible, which is counter to what you really should be doing by trying to keep that inventory going a little bit closer to stay date in order to maximize your opportunity. So you give the data behind it that allows people to make the right decision. So, Scott, what have you learned from creating this product, and what are you seeing in general with how Airbnb is really starting to take off in terms of demand and pricing and all of those things, just in general, and then maybe we could talk a little bit about more specific markets.
Yeah, sure. I think some of the surprising stuff is that, Airbnb launched in these major markets, San Francisco, New York, LA, Miami, and that's where they really took off, where hotel occupancy was super high. The ADRs were really high, and there was this opportunity for people to rent apartments and undercut what the hotel rate was and do really well at that. And that was basically my strategy, right? Get across from the Four Seasons, get a nice high-end condo, and price it 40% less than the Four Seasons kind of daily rate, and offer a lot more amenities. What's been interesting to watch over the last 5 years is the kind of the spread like a virus from kind of these city centers into every suburb, into every drive-through town and lake town across the U.S. And that's really what we've seen, is this spreading of Airbnb to kind of cover, every square mile of the U.S., like almost literally. And so there's opportunity to be had in a lot of traditionally suburban markets where there's no hotels, there's no options there when you're going to go visit your in-laws and you don't really want to stay at their house. And so that place right next door, or you're going to visit your cousin that's going in the hospital, right? So there's all these kind of new opportunities where a hotel doesn't make sense, but having 3 or 4 kind of Airbnb properties in the neighborhood does make a lot of sense. And so that's kind of the trend that we've seen, is just kind of that spreading out of properties. What was the other question you had?
You know what? I got so deep into your answer, I don't know. So instead of rewinding the tape, I'll just go straight and forge ahead and pretend that never ever happened. So Scott, what's interesting to me is how much it's spread about. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about some local markets. How much it's spread apart. It's like you could probably even rent like an outhouse in the outskirts of Kansas right now. It's not just the big cities like you were saying. But certain areas are just by reality are going to be a lot more profitable than others, and we've seen what's happened in some of the major cities. What are some of the observations that you're seeing about how Airbnb is starting to affect some of these major markets that are out there, both from the renters' perspective and then maybe how hoteliers are going to start to be concerned about what's going on as well?
I mean, I think first thing, it's created an amazing opportunity for entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's hundreds of thousands of people just in the U.S. alone that, are having now substantial income from this marketplace. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the major impact in people like myself. We left the kind of corporate environment and started businesses and are being successful on their own. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. Now what are the impacts on kind of traditional lodging and hotels?
Right.
Right now, minimal, I think, right? They still are all-time high occupancy rates and RevPARs, right? So they can't be complaining too much. I think what the worry is that, the market will soften at some point in time. And I think that this disruption, the disruption of Airbnb, will be hard felt in a substantial sort of softening of the market. I think Airbnb has a big advantage, right? These homeowners can lower their prices a lot. They don't have as much overhead. They have a lot more flexibility in what kind of rate they're willing to accept than maybe a hotel does. Also, people are looking to make some additional money when the economy softens. They're going to be putting more properties online, more primary residences, which are typically within the framework of all laws in major cities, will start to come on the market. So I think, hoteliers are starting to see that and see that is potential risk down the line. And so that is why you're seeing a lot of pushback from the AHLA about, how to regulate short-term rentals, because it is an existential threat at the end of the day.
Oh, it is definitely, I think, more than an existential threat. I think it's a real threat that hasn't necessarily revealed itself because the market is doing so great. It's obfuscating what's really happening behind the scenes. So while hoteliers are sitting there feeling really great about themselves, that they've been able to push rates now for 9 years straight, essentially, they don't realize that they're missing out on several percentage points every year because the market is being filled by this other product up there. I think it'll be more keenly felt when the market peaks and starts to go down a little bit, predominantly because of the reasons that you said out there. Scott, as far as the AHLA goes, their whole attitude is playing by the same rules, playing fair. Do you see that as a I'll just use the word again, fair way of trying to combat what they see as Airbnb as an existential threat?
I think Airbnb wants to play fair, and every property manager I know or Airbnb host I know totally willing to pay their taxes, right? Their local taxes. I think that there is something that they're communicating that is a bit disingenuous, which is we just want to have a level playing field, right? But hotels aren't limited to renting their place for 60 days out of the year, right? Mm-hmm. Like they can rent their place all year long, right? And that's kind of what's being passed down in most of these major markets. I think, in New York City, they say, hey, just pay your taxes. And then when Airbnb said, all right, we're willing to pay the taxes, they said, never mind, reversed their course and said, actually, no, we just don't want you here at all, right? So, I think it's an interesting battle that's going on, right? And it's a battle of public perception. Mm-hmm. And this is about kind of convincing homeowners that this is in their worst interest to be able to kind of monetize their space in any way they see fit. And, that's usually through some fear tactics and strangers in your backyard and all affordable housing issues, and they've been pretty successful at it. Will they be successful long term? I don't know. I have my doubts, but I think the pendulum's definitely swung towards the hotels, winning the regulatory battle now. But I think at some point in time, we'll swing back into the interest of the homeowner.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, and I do think. The effort spearheaded by Catherine Lugar, who runs the AHLA, has done a very effective job at making their position known because over the last 10 years or so, they've really upped their ability to make things happen on Capitol Hill. I think politicians in general are starting to realize what a great driver of the economy the tourism and hospitality business is. According to U.S. Travel, it's responsible for 1 in 8 jobs in the United States. So they've got the ears of the congressional representatives. So the pendulum has swung, I think, because of all of that. I like your perception that you think it's going to swing back at some point in the other direction. To me, make some interesting conversation. So I'm curious as to, are there great markets now that you're finding through the use of AirDNA statistics and data that you've put together that are really great opportunity for Airbnb providers, or are there markets where you feel that the hotel industry is really become dominant once again? I'm trying to get a little hint of that yin yang that's kind of happening right here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there are still great markets out there, and we set out a long time ago to provide knowledge, so there wasn't this sort of information dissymmetry out there, right? And so when there were great markets, we've told investors about it. So there's not the grand slam markets anymore, maybe like there were 3 or 4 years ago, but there's still some really standout markets. Nashville, we've been heralding for many of years to be one of the best markets in the world to invest in. We like to think about it as group travel as being really where Airbnb is taking off and where there's a great opportunity and a lack of supply. So we're talking about 4+ bedroom places, where people are going with all of their buddies that are 30 years old for their bachelor party, wherever people are going for things like that, like Austin and Charleston and Nashville. And those markets are really great. We also see a nice trend towards national parks where there's typically a lack of hotel supply and a lot of kind of year-round travelers going there. So we see, like Yosemite and Moab and outside Palm Springs, we see a lot of really great investment opportunities. Real estate's typically very cheap, and there's not really a lot of hotel supply in some of these markets. So we see a lot of people going into national park sort of markets as well.
Culturally speaking, where do you think all of this is headed, Scott? I mean, do you think Airbnb type products, either with them or VRBO or any of these other home sharing type of services that come up, will they become the predominant force in hospitality, or is the hotel business still going to reign supreme? Any gut feeling on that one?
That's a good question. If I knew the answer, I'd probably be a very wealthy man, because it's definitely shuffling out right now. And there's a lot of differing opinions about where it's all going to head.
Yeah.
I think it all comes down to kind of owning the experience end to end for the traveler. And I think Airbnb is doing a great job of owning that, right? From, they're trying to get into the air travel even, right? And so if they can get into your stay, your experiences, they just launched like concerts that they're doing and all the people you're meeting along the way, I think they're going to have a real competitive advantage down the road, where hotels are going to have a difficult time kind of playing in that, owning the entire experience.
Right.
So I think, as travelers are looking for more unique experiences, they're looking to engage in different parts of a city and not go down to like the central business district and stay there and really try to experience what it is to live like a local. Even that's kind of like the cheesy coin term by Airbnb. I think it is, it's really reflective of what people are looking for now. So there's no doubt, vacation rentals are growing much quicker than the kind of traditional hotels are. And that's because kind of a shift in how people are looking to experience leisure travel especially.
Right. And I think you're right on, Scott. And I think all the major hotel companies before the end of the year, or maybe in 2019, will have a major effort for this. Just yesterday, Marriott just decided, and I'm recording this on Wednesday, April 25th, for release on Friday the 27th, where they are going to be getting involved in London in the home sharing market kind of as an experiment. Choice Hotels started with vacation rentals a number of years ago. So I see more of a combining things. I don't see a silo approach coming in the future. I see all the big money starting to come into this and a combining of the industries. You think that is a what you're thinking as well?
Yeah, to me, I totally agree, right? It used to be a few years ago, hotels, head in the sand, this isn't my type of travel, or this is somebody sleeping on a couch.
Right.
We're not competing for the same type of guest, right? These are extended stays or super discounted stays. And I think they've realized that, they have merged and everything's converged in a big way. Where now, anytime somebody's looking to stay at a hotel, they're popping over to Airbnb and making sure there's not a better, cheaper option over there. And when the consumer is doing that, then you have to offer kind of a supply that is, similar rate or similar quality to the rate you can find on Airbnb. And so, they're getting into the market, right? And they're trying to figure out how to get into this vacation rental market. Accor has done it in a big way with their purchase of One Fine Stay and the other ones that you mentioned as well. So, I think convergence is going to be the name of the game, and it's not going to be I'm staying in a hotel or an Airbnb is just like, I'm staying in a place, or I'm just staying, right? And it's not going to be, accommodation specific.
Right. Now, hoteliers that are listening out there, I don't want to scare you. I want to arm you with knowledge and make sure that you are prepared for the future and to best leverage the opportunities that you see out there in the market. I highly encourage you to go check out novacancynews.com to watch a video that we produced in conjunction with the Serviced Apartment Summit Americas that I did with my Here to Stay TV project, where we went out in the streets of New York City and we talked to folks, asked them if they knew hotel brands, asked them if they knew Airbnb, asked them all these questions, and everybody seems to know Airbnb at this point when it comes to the younger generation of travelers, and they are making it their option of choice. Again, not to scare you, but you need to know what is happening out there so you can put up the best defense and create a strong offense to help win over all of these potential customers out there. Scott, before we wrap up and I let you give yourself some shameless plugs on AirDNA and your book, any final things that I may not have addressed in this conversation that you think are critical?
From a data perspective, I think that there's a lot of interesting growth in Airbnb, right? And I think that the hotels need to be thinking about Airbnb when they're working with Duetto on revenue management, right?
Thank you for the plug for Duetto.
We're really pushing.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I know. It's true. And the other ones out there. That's what we're really pushing for in this space, is that if you're just considering the other 4 competing hotels in your space, you're not thinking about the other 12,000 Airbnbs and how they're booked in your market. This is where we think this competitive intelligence is really impactful to the hotels. We're not just trying to empower the disruption in the marketplace. We're really trying to just provide knowledge across the lodging spectrum so everybody knows how to play and coincide with each other. And I think the hotels have kind of been slow to kind of adapt to figuring out, where should I be building new assets?
Right.
How should I be pricing my existing assets? Thinking about the holistic kind of lodging supply in the market. And so, that's one of the kind of educational sorts of things we've been working on, is try to figure out how to help hotels along the way as well.
Beautiful. I love that. I like that you're being an advocate for the hotel industry in general and helping to arm everybody with the information that they need to know. So now, if they're interested in AirDNA, how can they find you, Scott?
Yeah, well, our website's the easiest place, AirDNA.co, AirDNA.co, or you can find us on social media. But the website's the best place to get in touch with us.
All right, great. And how about that book, if anyone's interested in grabbing a copy of that?
Sure, you can find it on Amazon or on the website when you sign up for our kind of newsletter. It's called the Airbnb Experts Playbook, and it is all the tips and tricks about setting up high-performing short-term rental properties.
Beautiful. Well, that was really terrific, and I want to thank Scott Shatford for being here today. I know I learned a lot, and it's been interesting to watch him as his business has grown since I discovered it a couple of years ago. It's really terrific. Now, I hope you guys learned so much. Be sure to drop me a line, glenn@rouse.media, and let me know what you think about this whole thing, and maybe I'll be able to read some of your comments on an upcoming show. And also, if you're feeling kind of generous, go to patreon.com/novacancy. Throw me a couple of bucks. It would be helpful. I got teenage boys, and they don't stop eating. In fact, last weekend, I made an amazing meal for the entire family, and the boys ate the whole thing, and I had to go get takeout Chinese food, and I didn't even get to eat my own meal. So this is what we're talking about here. I'm going broke feeding teenagers. Help me out. But more importantly, thank you so much for listening, and I'm really delighted to have had Scott here. I'm delighted to have each and every one of you listening, and we will be back after this message. But remember this, whatever you do, take care of your shoes. We'll be right back after this message.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Glenn Hausman, and you know me from the No Vacancy podcast, but I have got an all-new show coming, and I'm partnering up with the #1 guy in hospitality, Mr. Anthony Melchiori.
Now, it's called the yin and yang of hospitality.
That's right.
So I need to know going forward, because I'm a control freak, am I yin or yang?
I'm definitely the one that starts with Y, and you could be whichever one you want to be.
I'll be the one that starts with Y.
All right, so you're going to have more great banter just like this every single episode on the yin and yang of hospitality, found wherever your favorite podcasts are available. Any final thoughts?
Yes, I'm yang.
All right, I'm Ying. Thanks for listening.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast with your host, Glenn Hausman.
All right, so I'm here at the Hunter Hotels Investment Conference, and I found myself some Alan Roberts. For those of you who don't know who he is, well, first of all, shame on you. And second of all, he's the global head of Embassy Suites by Hilton. Are you a by Hilton these days?
I am a by Hilton, right. Yes. Thank you, Glenn.
Because there was a time when nobody was by Hilton. Now everyone is by Hilton in the family.
I think we're all by Hilton now.
I think so,
I think
too.
We've all achieved the status of by Hilton.
I think that makes a whole lot of sense. It really just clarifies it in the mind of consumer, especially as we see all of this industry consolidation. It's coming together, and people want to stay with the same family of brands because of the loyalty points, blah, 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 blah. But I'm not here to talk about any of that. I'm here to talk about how you have got the smoothest voice in all of hospitality.
You always say that. Every time I sit down with you give me that. Someday I'm going to get a voiceover plug. It's going to come out of the podcast.
Listen, man, you absolutely should. If this brand leadership thing doesn't work, I think...
I have the face for radio.
I was about to say late night radio show for love music. I can just see that right now.
Yeah, right. And now coming on, we'll play some Barry White for the lovers out there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, I've been following, not only your career, but Embassy Suites for a super long time. And for those of you who listen to the show, I seem to be really into talking about all suites hotels, extended stay hotels, serviced apartments. And I feel like Embassy Suites was there before people even knew what this whole idea was. Now, everybody wants these types of hotels to stay in.
That's a really great perspective, and we would agree with you. People that have been around the Embassy Suites brand, and there's a lot that have been around the brand longer than even I have been around the brand. A ton of the people that have been around the brand a lot longer. But we would all agree with you, right? The brand was the category was kind of created by Embassy Suites and the visionaries that created the brand 35 years ago now, I believe it is. So
wow, that long?
It's been a long time. 1980, well, almost 35. So 1984, so 34 years.
Close enough. You could have said 35. I don't think anyone would have given you.
Nobody's going to measure, right? Yeah. So, but yes, we are that. We are all that, and the brand has been extremely successful through the 34-year legacy that it is, and it continues on that journey. We continue to set trends, and we continue to be performance makers, and our owners love what we bring to the table, and the guests give us great feedback. So it's a fantastic brand. I'm excited about it.
Now, that is what interests me, because you've been around for so long that sometimes brands kind of lose their way. I can think of a lot of retail brands, for example, that were the most dominant in their field that are now gone. Bye-bye Sears. Just this last week we heard about Toys R Us, things like that. But I haven't seen that with Embassy Suites. I feel like, and I hate when I start to sound like a suck-up with these things. But
you like our brand, though.
I do. I really do like the brand, and I really enjoy the experiences that I have when I've stayed there, especially with my family, for example. But I feel like you knew right at the right moment when you were heading towards that precipice of maybe irrelevancy to kind of flip everything on its head and kind of change.
Yeah, the nice thing about a brand and about franchising is that there is a license agreement that comes into play. So there's a natural life cycle with that if you're paying attention to the indicators, and if you're listening to your guests, and if you're listening to your owners, there's a natural timing that happens when you begin to innovate and change and adapt the brand to what you need it to be next. And the brands that do that successfully are the ones that have long-standing lifespans. And we're in the process of that. We're in the middle of that right now. That cycle began to hit us about 3 years ago. It began to hit the brand as licensed, that those first early hotels the license agreements began to expire, and we knew that we had this big bubble of expirations coming upon us, and we went to the innovations table and decided what we wanted to be.
So how does that work? How do you figure all of that out? How do you know what's actually a trend and not a fad type of thing to put in the hotel? Because I've seen a lot of elements of brands come and go, and I still don't understand why people try putting giant computers in hotel rooms. For example,
there's such things as hard trends and soft trends, right? There's fads that run. There's hard trends that you see forever and a day, but the long and the story of this is really that the core of what this brand is about isn't going away, right? The space that the two rooms provide, the complimentary complimentary cook-to-order breakfast and the complimentary evening receptions are value propositions that guests appreciated 30 years ago, and they still appreciate to this day. And it plays into the equation that makes us successful. So staying true to those, the rest of it is about kind of the trappings, right? The decor, the finishes, the way you lay all of that out. And we have a lot of, I have the power of Hilton behind me as the name stands. So we have a lot of teams out there that do the research for us and feed that information back to us to help us come up with the concepts that we come up with.
Speaking of feeding, I do love that complimentary breakfast, except at the Anaheim Hotel at about 8 a.m. when I'm about 800 online for my
I was going to say, when
omelet.
you're knee deep and all the kids in the forest. Yeah, that is, Anaheim and Orlando are prime test markets for anything we're doing with food and beverage, because we feel like if we can succeed there, we can take it pretty much anywhere, because you're right. It's just massive amounts of people that move through.
I would really like to own that hotel, especially with Star Wars Land opening up next year.
I can probably talk to somebody for you if you want to make a bid on it.
Yeah.
I think I know.
Sure, because that's what I really want to do, buy my first hotel at above market rates, because
in Anaheim,
I know what I'm doing. Yeah, exactly. So we've established that everybody likes a free breakfast and some free cocktails at night, but it seems to me more meaningful to me in that, especially the evening reception. There seems to be a sense of a community about it, a sense of connecting with the guests in ways that I'm afraid we could lose when we get too technology-oriented in our business.
Yeah, I think there is some of that. And Hilton has been big with our Digital Key app through the Honors app. And we know that there is a hard trend on the way where there is a potential for less face-to-face interaction with our guests, because as we get more self-reliant on apps in this world and we can move ourselves along, especially travelers like yourself and myself who spend much of their time on the road, you want to make it as easy as possible. So what we're seeing, though, is food and beverage is becoming that new front desk for us, and that's driving a lot of the innovations that we have going on in our evening reception right now, and with the work that we're doing with our complimentary breakfast, both of which are not going away by any stretch of the imagination, but we are innovating them and we're evolving them to meet more of today's customers' expectations. And that is the place where you have to make sure you have the team members that engage with the guests, that they are playing the role that the front desk traditionally would have played in the past, and they're having those conversations and they're listening. And we're in that change process right now. I think it's something that's happening across the industry. It's just not just Embassy Suites. We just happen to have a unique opportunity with it because of those two service offerings that we have.
I can't underscore that point enough about how that is really becoming the new front desk. I haven't heard it put that way before, but I'm a big believer that the bartender is going to become the most important human being in the hotel.
I agree.
Yes, they already are for a lot of people.
But they are the personality. You're right.
Right. Because as we lose that connection and those moments at the front desk, we have to find other ways to have meaningful connections with customers. Because to me, I find your brand's great, but there's so many other great brands there. I never leave going, that was such a great hotel because of the bed, even though it was great, or because of the wall covering, though it was great.
Right.
It's really, I had this interaction with XYZ individual who did something for me that made me feel special or cared for.
Yeah, at Embassy Suites we have a brand personality that we call "Make a Difference." And it's the short tagline with it is making differences in the lives of others in ways both big and small. There's a lot that goes into that when we orient new team members into the program, but it permeates the personality of the team from bottom to top, right? It's something that we strive. We have make a difference committees on the properties, and it's something that we strive to kind of drive everything that they do. And it's really about listening. It's about the golden rule. It's about engaging with guests and every opportunity that you have to engage with them. But who has a better opportunity than that than your food and beverage teams? The bartender being probably the principal leader amongst that, or the bartenders, as the case may be in that Anaheim situation.
That one in particular. It's the mornings, like I said, the long lines at the Make Your Eggs, and at night a lot of bedraggled parents just dying for a cocktail.
That's true. Well, and you know who takes the role in the mornings at an Embassy Suites? It's those cooks.
Yes.
You'll find those folks that work behind that cook-to-order station are the ones that have the biggest personalities.
Right.
And then they can get guests talking to them as they go through the line. It shortens that whole shortens the feeling of that whole process, right? It makes it more enjoyable to go through.
Well, I got to admit to you, Alan, the men and women that are cooking my omelets in the morning, they make me feel really horrible about myself. There's a reason why I say this. Don't put on a face. I know it's because they're all so good at making those omelets and flipping them, then I go home and the eggs are sticking all over the pan, and I can't seem to get it done. And I really think I need to get myself a job at an Embassy Suites just so I can learn how to cook eggs the right way.
They are masters.
Yes.
They are absolutely masters, and they can do that like 6 omelets at the same time.
Right, dude. I try to do that move where they they take that spatula and they just lift it up a little bit and get the liquid egg to go underneath.
Yeah.
But mine still stick to the bottom of the freaking pan.
Yeah.
I think what we need to do is, number one, get me somebody that I could learn how to do this with, and then tell me who your vendor is for for the metal trays there, the pans.
I think what I just had was an idea. I need to figure out how to go to a property and do my own little podcast or a little video vignette and put it out on something and say, here's how to cook the perfect omelet.
All right, I think we should
that's
definitely do that. The next time you and me are together
we'll do
in
that.
the same city, we'll go to NBSP
That's what we need to do.
and do that. And while I'm at it, just check out novacancynews.com for all these cool video interviews I do. But not this one, because we're on the...
no, this was not video.
We're doing the podcast. Sorry I didn't have my video guy with me on this. Otherwise, we'd get to see that great face to go with the amazing voice.
With the overnight radio voice.
All right. So I want to hear a little bit about some of the more of the changes that are happening in terms of development with the brand, where you're headed with it right now, because full-service hotels aren't necessarily as popular to build as select-service hotels, or at least that's what I'm told time after time after time again. Here at the Hunter Investment Conference, finding a lot of full-service guys down there is going to be difficult. So
that's right.
Where are you finding places to build hotels? How is all of that working for you? Because I know it's been successful. I've seen the pipeline.
It is. Yeah, the pipeline's strong. We're at 47 right now, 47 in the pipe across primarily North America, and Latin America, and the Caribbean. It is an expensive brand, and that's the reason, right? That's the proposition for it, because we're more expensive to build than the select serve or the focus service hotels, and we recognize that. Any given year, we open 10 to 15 hotels. That's a great year for us, right? We'll open, I think, 11 this year is what we have on our agenda.
Which is totally different when you look at another Hilton brand, True, which signed up, I think, 85,000 new hotels.
They're going to next year. I think they're going to open 1 hotel a day or something. Right. It's something like that. It's really a phenomenal growth story with that hotel, that brand. But where we find them is the magic with Embassy Suites is that it delivers on a GOP number for an operator similar to what those hotels deliver, right? So we see within our own managed portfolio of hotels, I recently saw a 44% GOP, which is a little on the low side, but a lot of those hotels are the big legacy style properties that we have with a big central atrium. The even newer prototypes that were the new Design Option 3 prototype that's being built by most of the developers that you'll talk to here, they're telling me they're getting close to 50% GOP. So it's a phenomenal performance story for the brand once you make that initial investment in it. And the owners that have figured that mix out and that story out, they're eager to do more of them. We have a lot of repeat customers.
And if you don't know what GOP means, it means gross operating profit. We're not talking about Republicans.
No, we're not. Thank
Although
you.
I'm sure that maybe half the people that stay in Embassy Suites
I'm sure they are. But that is not what I was referencing. You're exactly right. Yeah, gross operating profits.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I'm going to get my year off here. I want to say it was 7 to 10 years ago where you took the whole giant atrium concept and kind of reinvented it, which again I think was ahead of the time as we're seeing smaller footprints now.
And that was a need at the time, and that was actually about 10 years ago now. So it was a little longer back. That was when Design Option 3, which is what we call that prototype, was launched, and it was done out of a need, right? Those original prototypes were very expensive to build. And by doing what we did with Design Option 3, which was kind of not decoupling, but pulling the traditional atrium out to the front of the building and then allowing the owner to build a more traditional rooms tower and getting the efficiencies that you get out of operating a building like that, not only from an air handling capacity, but also from a housekeeping capacity. Mm-hmm. Suddenly you've taken what was a single loaded corridor that had rooms on one side, and the housekeeper had to traipse all the way around the floor. It just added length to their time. Now you can go back and forth in the hallway and service the rooms on one side or the other. It just made everything more efficient. So that reduced the cost to build, and that was necessary to keep the brand alive. And that was, I can't take credit for that. That was the brand leaders at that time, 10 years ago.
It was Jim Holdhauser,
right? That's correct. Yeah, that saw that need, and that's what breathed new life into the pipeline for Embassy Suites. And now as the older prototypes were beginning to age out, we launched the Atrium Refresh to recast those older hotels in a mold or a model that now resembles what the new prototype was to feel like, so that you didn't have an experience of one brand but two different, very different feelings. We wanted to create one central kind of a look, feel, so that when a guest walks in, it's a different building. That's fine. Most hotels are different buildings, but it's still the same feel. You walk in and go, oh yeah, I got it. This is definitely an Embassy. It all feels like an Embassy to me, and and then you have the same stay experience, and you get the value proposition.
I like what you say, feels like an embassy.
Yep.
That to me allows you to follow the trends of being more local in design and experience.
Absolutely, and that is something that we pride ourselves in. As a full service brand, we do have a prototype, but the prototype is really more kind of a roadway and a pathway to what you want to do. The prototype is designed purposefully to be a kit of parts, so it can fit in any location. That's how we opened up in Manhattan, and we got another hotel in Manhattan. We never could have done that if we'd have been rigid about how the prototype had to be built. We just opened another wonderful, or we're about to open, I should say, at the end of this month, a beautiful hotel. If you're in Seattle, take a look at the new one on Seattle and Pioneer Square. It is a magnificent representation of what an Embassy Suites can be, going down the road in a center city kind of a location. It's just gorgeous.
Why?
Because it has all of the wins, right? It has the space that you get from that original atrium sense. It has this one actually has a couple of different restaurants in it, but it has large space to accommodate and for the same purposes that you mentioned in Anaheim when you get those crowds on the weekends. This location is right across from the Seattle Seahawks field. It's right. I mean, part of the building actually looks over into the stadium. It's just a fantastic location. So that means game day, baseball games and football games, they're going to get walloped on weekends. They're going to serve huge amounts of people, and they've set themselves up for it. The owners saw what was coming. They were visionaries on it, and they partnered with our design teams to come up with a solution that will hits every single one of our requirements out of the park. If anything, they went a little over the top on the decor side of it because of where it is and the location that it's in. But I just went and visited it last week, and I just told them then, I said, this is one of the most beautiful Embassy Suites I've ever seen. I'm really proud of what they've done out there for that.
Well, I'm definitely excited to hear that. Yeah. So, what about meeting space? What's going on with that these days?
We are a meetings hotel. We're not a meetings centric brand. We're not thought of that way in a lot of ways, but we are absolutely that way. We have 75, 80 of our hotels that have more than 10,000 square feet of meeting space. It's a significant amount of the brand that has a significant amount of meeting space, and because of that, we do play in that market. It's a big focus for us with our sales teams, with our Hilton Worldwide sales teams, and with our local sales teams to train them on the backyard selling skills that are techniques to bring that business into their hotel. So it's absolutely a big focus for us. It's the hotel I just mentioned in Seattle, not a ton of space, 7,000 square feet, but it's because of their location, and they can accommodate nice meetings. They can do a great wedding on a rooftop venue. They can do good corporate meetings, but they're not a convention location type of hotel. So, but we do have those locations in the right markets.
Going back before your time with Embassy, I want to say it was 2000, 2001 when you had a property in downtown Manhattan on the Lower West Side, right? It's now a Conrad
that is
hotel,
correct.
right?
That is correct.
They rolled out Creativity Suites, which I think was way too ahead of its time now. But I would love to see brought back now. We see all this co-located workspace happening now in hotels, and the whole idea of trying to get out of your office and think differently and be differently. Bring that back for me. That's
a great suggestion. I'll take that back. As a matter of fact, what we are about to embark on this year, I mentioned the prototype, the Design Option 3 prototype is now 10 years old. It's been wildly successful for us, massive pipeline still, but it's 10 years old. So it's time to take a look at it. It's time to see costs have risen. We all can hear that from any of the guys here at Hunter. We'll talk about it. But it's time to take a look at that and figure out, are we appropriate for where we need to be today? I think there's some opportunities, and that's a great idea. I'll throw that in the mix.
Because I see the way that people are meeting and trying to be productive. It's so different than it was, and the whole idea of just being in a four-walled off room with around a table
doesn't exist anymore,
right?
And the new generation coming in, the new.
I know.
I don't want to even say it, but the
younger people,
the new younger people that are coming in, that are joining the workforces today, they don't work that way. They don't want to work that way. They're going to force the change. So far, they've forced a lot of things to change in business in general. They're pushing the envelope, and we need to be able to push that envelope with them. I'm excited about what it's bringing, and I think that there's some good opportunities with that. I don't like to sit in the office all day. It's great to get out and have some social space to interact with. It's what we're doing with the evening reception. It's what we've kind of designed it around, is that social ability to be in a space and kind of engaged, but we've done it around the bar with that. This would be more around work, but it's central to the theme of what we've done with the Atrium Refresh is creating spaces where people can sit down with their computer and work in a group setting, but not necessarily engaging with everybody, but you're just not alone and you're in a setting. So it just is a natural progression of that to me.
I call that being alone together.
It is, right? Being alone while not being alone.
Because sometimes I just want to get out of my room and have that kind of energy around me, but I want to be an observer and not participate. I know it's very hard for you guys listening out there to believe this, but I'm really not good at talking to people.
No, you do it so much, right? There comes a point in time that you want to just unplug, right? Because I am not that dissimilar in that. And the more I'm in the role that I'm in and the longer I go in these kind of business leading face of the brand kind of a role that I'm in, I find that when I get the time to disconnect, it's really valuable time to disconnect.
Well, the worst thing that could ever happen to me, and it just happened to me on a recent flight, is, so that's my time to be left alone, and,
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Sits right across the aisle, some dude I sort of know, and then I'm compelled to have to talk to. And they just want to talk the entire time.
The entire flight.
And it's really hard to make that move to put on the headphones and, politely go about your business.
Without feeling like you've just been the biggest heel in the world. That's because we're all hospitality wired and you're just not wired to do that, right?
Right.
It's not nature.
I'm very binary. I'm either on or completely off. And when I'm off, it's really hard to get me going. I was on a trip last week and I was off the whole week and I was with 16 other people and everybody was like the entire time and I was just like
You're totally content to let everybody else do the talking.
Right. Yeah. I just totally felt like an observer, not a participator.
That's how it is in my house on the weekends when my wife and daughter are at home. It's like I'm just kind of the observer and I'm yes. It's okay and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I was about to say that doesn't sound so bad.
Not bad. That's right.
So what are you looking most forward to in the future? Not just necessarily with the Embassy Suites, but perhaps where all of Hilton is headed to?
Hilton is in a major innovation phase right now, right? We've really embraced the idea of innovation as our footprint, and that excites me because if you look back at the history of Hilton in general, when it started way back with Conrad, he was an innovative guy. He was always looking for the next new thing. Now, it may have been something that we take for granted today, like the first hotel with color TVs and some of those kind of things, but it's always been around and it's always been a core part of what Hilton is about. And not that we've gotten away from that completely, but I do think at some point we kind of stopped focusing on it as much, and now that's coming back stronger than ever with our innovation gallery that we have in McLean and with the focus that we have on our innovations teams. And I'm just excited as a brand leader because I know that I've got the day-to-day that I deal with the brand. That doesn't give me a lot of time to be real innovative. I have to be strategic. I have to be looking at the business metrics and those things. But to know that I've got a team of innovators kind of sitting behind the scenes and looking at the trends, and they're going to be able to feed that kind of information and those ideas out to the brands to decide which ones are relevant, which ones we want to partake in, which ones we want to incorporate. That's exciting to me because that's what's going to keep us going into the future. So that's good.
So tell me, what's a day like in your world?
My world.
I speak to a lot of brand leaders, but a lot of it always comes down to that conversation. Oh, pipeline numbers. This is where we're innovating. Blah blah blah. That sort of things. But what do you do on a typical day when you're not visiting a property?
I spend a lot of time in meetings.
Right.
Awesome. I spent a lot of times talking to a variety of different people. Some of those meetings are internal, strategic in nature. Where's the brand going? Performance numbers. What are we doing about opportunities that we see in the future? Kind of trying to look around corners, trying to forecast down the road, those types of things. I would say that's probably, 50% of the day. And then the other 50% is very owner-centric. I spend a lot of time talking to individual owners or working with our teams like our development teams or our brand performance support teams to motivate, inspire, clear hurdles, find out new ideas, a lot of that type of thing that I do, which is innovation focused with our owners and understanding what they need from us.
So then speaking about potential owners, because obviously Hilton has a robust franchise sales
fantastic franchise development team.
So at what point do you come into the process, if at all? I'm sure you must.
I do, absolutely. I do. No, they like you said, we have a great team out there. I know them all very well. They know my availability is open to them. Whenever they need me to is the best answer I can give to that, right?
Well, I guess every potential client is different personality and has different needs and desires.
And it depends, right? Most of the time when I get engaged with them, it's usually when you've got a new to the brand kind of possibility.
Right.
Somebody that doesn't understand the metrics, they look at an Embassy Suites and they see, wow, that's really an expensive build, but they don't understand the backside of the performance story. And I need to go in and help them understand that and explain to them the performance story. Or they are used to building very prototypical hotels, and they don't understand when they see our prototype, they think that's going to be what we're going to require them to do, and they don't understand the kit of parts deal. And they want to understand kind of the spectrum of what that means, and I can go in and meet with them on those. I do a lot of that with the development team, and I frankly find that's a fun part of the job. That's talking to somebody about their vision and their dream and their ideas for their own business and their future, and helping to engage them with that is just exciting. I get a rush out of that.
Well, yeah, you're in the hospitality business, and that's the hospitality part.
That's the hospitality part. Right?
I'm a little shocked that you don't say the internal meetings are more exciting.
They're
personally.
wonderfully exciting because most of those are with my bosses, and they're great guys to meet with all the time.
I love that. So, any final thoughts before we wrap up this conversation today, Alan?
Yeah, no, I just I just want to make sure that everybody that's listening, because I know we have kind of a mix of folks in the business, folks that are on the traveler side of the business and just engaged and find it interesting. Embassy Suites is a tremendous brand that in the next year and a half to 2 years is going to really be kind of reborn. I'm using the air quotes on that, reborn into a new brand again. And that's what's exciting to me, because I've been on this journey, and we've talked about it for almost 3 years now, this renovation cycle that we've been in. And seeing that come to an end for me is not just about a relief, because it's a very trying time to go through with the brand. It's tough on the owners, it's tough on the operators, it's tough on the guests. But it's just the culmination of a work of passion that I've been that myself, my teams, owners that we're partnered with are seeing come to an end. And I'm excited because I think the guests are going to really appreciate it and love it. The results that we see from the hotels that have already been completed are phenomenal. Most of the results that we get out of this, double-digit increases on guest satisfaction scores. We're seeing, for the owners, we're seeing double-digit increases in ADR and in RevPAR numbers. So there's a strong story on that end of it too. But to me, it's the hospitality guy, right? It goes back to guests are going to love it, owners are going to love it because it's going to perform, and we're going to get back to being kind of a normal brand that doesn't have this cycle of disruption going on right now, and it's just fantastic. So I'm looking forward to that, and I want your travelers to try us out. If they haven't stayed in an Embassy in a while, I want people that are out there to try one out, one of the renovated hotels or one of the new build hotels, and let us know what you think.
So make sure you stay at every single Embassy that you possibly can, even Anaheim. My tip, just go to breakfast bar at like 7 a.m., not 8 a.m.
Right, yeah. Pay attention to the stoplights. If you know what I'm talking about. You've seen the stoplight in there. Not my favorite sign in the world, but it works. Yeah. Go when it's green. Don't go when it's red.
Right. I like that. So as far as I'm concerned, make sure you stay. At any Embassy suite, it's always a green light to stay at an Embassy
always
suite.
A green light to stay.
Right. Anything else that you want to add?
No, just invite anybody. If you have any feedback for me, if anybody wants to reach me, they can do that. It's the easiest way is the emails. My name is Alan, ALAN.Roberts@Hilton.com.
All right, and no spam his way, please.
Oh, I can take care of that.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for being here.
Glenn. It's always a pleasure.
And for Alan Roberts and myself, I want to thank you guys for listening every single week. Be sure to check us out at novacancynews.com. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and wherever podcasts can be found. And if you're not subscribing to the newsletter, for shame. Text the word hotel to 66866. That's the word hotel to 66866, and we'll get you signed up for that newsletter right away. And I will be back next week. That is, unless I decide to go to the Embassy Suites omelet making school and make that the rest of my vision for life. Thanks for listening. See you all next week.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at Traveling Glenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.